Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name is, of course, Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about New World in 2021. And today we're going to be talking about why New World is so much fun. And I know it's going to make for a very ranty, all over the place video, but here we are, we're going to do it. It's essentially my first impressions of the game that I want to capture in this video. I've waited about 2 weeks since release, although when this video comes out it might be closer to 3 weeks. And I just wanted to see how I felt after the dust is settled, because I've essentially done this part of the game, this level 1 to 20 section, 3 times now. I've done it once a year ago, and then once about 2 months ago, and then I'm now currently doing it again. And for a lot of reasons, I thought, hey, am I going to get too tired of this? Am I not going to want to do this for the 3rd time? But no, I've been absolutely loving myself. I've been loving every moment in the game, and I find it super bizarre because when I take a step back, when I look at what New World has to offer, what kind of MMO it is, for so many reasons, it's not an MMO that I would normally play. It's less theme park than I would normally choose. It's got less specific types of content that I normally like, and it's got some pretty glaring issues that lots of community members have pointed out, that despite all of that, it seems like a lot of people, including myself, are still really enjoying the game. So with all that on the table, I wanted to talk about some of the main reasons I'm finding New World so much fun, and hopefully if you feel the same way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But let's jump into the video. So the first one is just about how fresh the game feels, and it really ties into that idea I had that, hey, I've done this twice already. Do I really want to go through the leveling process again? Yes, I've only leveled to level 20 in the betas. I do want to see what endgame is and all that, but surely I'm going to be tired of doing these first 20 levels again. And no, I wasn't. And I try to figure out what it is, and I think it's a mixture of a lot of different points that I'm going to make in this video, but more than anything, it's how exciting and fresh the core mechanics of the game feel. When you talk about, you know, your weapon and how it engages with the enemy, and just the feeling of the impact your skills make, it feels really satisfying. Even killing, you know, your 500th wolf still sounds and feels amazing. The other part of this is the world, and this is something that we'll talk more about, and it's something that everyone talks about, is that the world is so beautiful. It sounds amazing, the lighting's amazing. It's a pleasure to be in the game. Honestly, walking between points, which you do a ton in this game, is magical. And if you're doing magical stuff a lot, well, it can feel really, really good. So I think that's a huge part of this. Obviously, we're still in the honeymoon phase. I don't know how long the honeymoon phase lasts for an MMO. Maybe it's several months, maybe it's 1 month, maybe it's a year. Eventually, this freshness is going to wear off. You know, there's no game where it doesn't. I look back at some of the greats that I really enjoyed personally. I look at WildStar, I look at MapleStory, RuneScape, whatever you want. Eventually, the freshness of the game is going to wear off, and you have to rely on the content behind it. And hopefully, at that point, Amazon Game Studios and New World has a good content layout and delivery system that's able to support the players that are still there. Because I don't think that content's there. So I think if they don't get it there in time and the freshness wears away, there's going to be some issues. But certainly at the moment, the freshness is able to carry the game, and I think it just adds so much to the basic things you do. The second huge thing, and probably more of a personal thing to myself, is that I'm taking it slow. And this is something that I've really changed about the way I approach any new game, and specifically new MMOs, that I've kind of implemented about 2 and a bit years ago when I started Final Fantasy XIV. And for those of you who have not watched this channel before, essentially I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV for 2.5 years, and I'm only at Stormblood, which is an exceptional amount of time to take to get to that point in the game. But the main way I play it is I only progress, I only play the game when I feel like playing the game. Which sounds like a weird thing to say, but in so many other situations, in so many MMOs, people log in and they're like, okay, I really want to do dungeons with my friends at max level, so I'm just gonna like bite my lip and spend the next 10 hours grinding away as fast as I can through this content so I can get there. And it's such a big part of the MMO industry that we never question that part. We're never like, wait, should this thing I'm trying to get through, should that not be fun as well? And oftentimes it can be if you let it be. And that's something I've been experiencing with Final Fantasy XIV. And yes, there's obviously apples and oranges in terms of story content for Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft throughout leveling, but the way you approach it does change things a lot. And with that in mind, I'm trying to take that approach for New World. I'm level 26 or 27 now, and I'm by no means slow. Like, there are people who are going slower. I see level 9s, I see level 10s and stuff like that, but there are plenty of people who are already level 60. So I feel like I'm definitely taking my time and enjoying things. I'm taking my time to do side quests, to explore different areas of the map. I love making sure I go to all the different little question marks you see on the map to see the different areas and experience them, even if they end up being the exact same mob type in a slightly different laid out NPC town or something like that. I just want to see it. I think the world's beautiful, and seeing the different areas makes me so happy. So that's one part of things. The other thing is more actually tied to the game itself. There is no real layout for what endgame is in New World, and that's kind of a bad statement in itself, and going back to our initial point, is something that the game needs to fix before the honeymoon or the freshness wears off. But in the meantime, it's kind of another reason not to rush to max level. I mean, if you know all you're going to be doing at max level is essentially very similar to what you're doing now, yes, there's some new things, like some new max level dungeons, outpost rush and stuff like that you can do a max level that you can't do otherwise. But for the large part, you can do the same thing, so you may as well just take your time getting there and really enjoy the journey. Now, the next point is something that I'd say is more of a unique experience for me in New World, and this is maybe more fun because I've never done it before in a lot of other games, but it's the PvP system and the way you can actually flag yourself for open world PvP. I'll be the first to admit that open world PvP is something I've stayed away from in a lot of games that do allow it, and typically I don't seek out games that are specifically about it. For instance, when New World was marketed as purely a survival/PvP game, I had very little interest in it. I'm definitely one of the people they've captured by expanding some of the PvE elements and by allowing PvP to be more of an optional thing. I'm also someone who does think that a dedicated PvP server would be a lot of fun, so don't get me wrong, I understand some of the PvP side of things, but I've really enjoyed the ability to toggle it, and for the most part, I've toggled it on pretty much any time I'm actually actively sitting down and ready to play New World for a few hours, because the level of intensity, the level of focus I have when I have PvP on, when I'm going through Brightwood and it's misty and around any corner there could be, a high-level person ready to attack, it's so much fun. It's next level spooky, and it's exhilarating. It really is. It's something I haven't experienced in many other MMOs. And it's not that other games can't offer that. It's really that I haven't gone out looking for it as much as I have in this game. And I think a lot of it is the fact that it's just so easy to flip on and off. I don't know if it's the clean UI, I don't know if it's the fact that they have so many different sentry areas that you can flip it on and off, but it's really easy to do, and I do it a lot. And the rewards aren't honestly even that great for it. I think it's like 10% experience, which is comparatively a lot less than I usually end up getting in World of Warcraft, because I'm usually on the Alliance, which is usually rewarded a lot more because of the faction imbalance. But it's super easy to do, and I just do it. Now, you do get actually a lot of weapon experience or weapon mastery points for killing people in PvP, so it can be quite beneficial if you do it. And in terms of satisfaction, almost nothing in the game feels better than winning a duel in the open world. If you're just out there and you run into someone from the enemy faction doing the same quest as you, and you have this epic showdown and you end up walking away victorious, so much fun. Can it be very frustrating when you die? Yes. Can it be extremely frustrating when you die because there's an enemy faction group that's sort of around the quest objective guarding it? Very much so. And it's in those situations that you can flag PvP off and just go on your merry way for a bit and get some distance between yourself and that group of people. But I don't know, I've had so much fun. And what really brings the enjoyment is the ability to toggle between that and relaxation mode. When I have PvP toggled off, when I can listen to the ambient noises of New World and maybe a podcast or something in the background and just go and gather and chop as many trees as I want, that's a complete different sensation from the game. And being able to switch between those two different modes keeps each of them very fresh. I think if I was to only do one of them the whole time, I'd either get burnt out or bored. But the ability to switch and have essentially the same content feel completely different depending on that makes the game so much fun. So if you haven't figured it out by now, this video is essentially just a list of reasons why I think New World's a bunch of fun. I don't know if I intended for it to be this way eventually, at the start of this, but I kind of just wrote down some ideas, and I guess I've written them down in a list format, and because of that, this is what the video is. But it's working, and I'm going with it. So the next item on our list is the weapons, and in reality, this really just talks about the combat of New World, which I have issues with, don't get me wrong. I mean, there is a certain level of clunkiness, specifically in regards to dungeons and group content, that is almost unavoidable when it comes to action combat. However, I think it is really fun as well. And the big thing is that it's simple. When you look at it, and it's almost overly simple for some, especially people who are watching it, because you get 3 abilities, which isn't a lot. And you have 2 weapons, so like a total of 6 active abilities. You have a light attack, a heavy attack, and a block, which really doesn't give you a ton of options, but when you're actually out there in the game, it makes each action you choose feel a lot more interesting. It makes it feel so rewarding when you dodge out of a big attack and land a huge attack back yourself, or when you block an enemy's huge attack and then respond in a different way. It makes it really engaging and really fun. So although there's a lack of overall abilities, especially compared to Final Fantasies and World of Warcrafts and stuff like that, the abilities themselves feel very impactful. The other thing here is that there's a lot of weapons, and that opens up a lot of different weapon combinations you can do, because essentially you can choose any 2 weapons to play with. Now, based on stat points, it does make sense to pair certain weapons together, so you probably don't want to pair absolutely everything with anything, but you could. And I've seen plenty of builds online of people pairing things that in terms of stats don't make a ton of sense, but in terms of the way they've played with them work. So I think you can definitely be viable with anything. It might not be meta, but I've tried to stay away from that word as much as possible so far, because I think one of the more enjoyable parts of New World has been just fiddling around with the different builds, because there's so many different ways you can build your character. The other thing that makes me really excited is the fact that they could simply add new weapons trees to the game and make everything so much more exciting again. You know, you add a new weapon and all of a sudden you want to go grind it in all these old places and experience all this old content you've done with this new weapon. Like, it's just such a cool piece of the game. And the fact that it's kind of a system on its own that they can just add things to, obviously, hopefully while balancing it with the rest of the game, makes it really exciting. So I'm just really excited to see what they add. Because the other part of this is that they've added a lot of weapons to the game already that are very unique to New World. Is there another game where I throw spears at people, where I throw hatchets at people, where I have a musket that I can actually aim down the sight and scope in an MMO? I've talked about this in every single video I've done about New World so far, but the musket is so much fun. I literally just spend hours shooting people with a musket, and it, you know, watching it looks kind of boring because it's slow, you're loading it, it's not incredibly hard to hit people, especially if it's just PvE targets, but it's so satisfying, and I'm just super excited to keep leveling up the weapon and getting the rest of the traits unlocked to hit more, to zoom in better, to have more traps or whatever. So I think there's a lot of possibility here, and the fact that the basic system feels so good really makes me excited for what the future can hold. And you can't talk about grinding without talking about gathering and crafting in this game, which I think honestly is universally the part of the game that people like the most, because it does it very well. It's essentially RuneScape, but 3D in a lot of ways. And yes, there's some very specific differences, and there's some things that New World could definitely improve upon. But if you're someone who at all got enjoyment out of leveling specific skills in RuneScape, or maybe Black Desert Online, or any specific game that allowed you to do that, playing New World just to play that part of the game is probably worth it. I mean, it's a buy-to-play game. You buy it once, and you can have all the fun you want farming out these different skills. It feels really enjoyable. And there's a lot of reasons I think it does feel really enjoyable and it does it really well in this game. And I've tried to analyze this, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I think one of the main things, well, there's two essential things, I think. Number one is that the actual story quests do drive you to use the crafting and profession skills very directly. And a lot of games do this, but it makes it very clear in New World that your ability to use these skills is going to be essential to completing quests, but also just to survive and really make it in this world. The other part of it is the world itself, and so many of these points keep on coming back to the world of New World, but the fact that you walk through the game and essentially everything you see is an object that can be consumed or used for gathering and professions. And it's kind of overwhelming at first because you walk through the forest and every single tree you see, it's not just there for visuals. You can chop it down, and it actually chops down. You take the wood, you see it fall, and it's gone. It'll respawn eventually, but it's gone. You walk through the bushes beside the trees, and you can gather them. You can gather, the berries from them, or if it's just, bushes, you can grab wood from them, or if it's a different plant of some sort, or fungus, you can grab that. If it's an animal, you can probably kill it and skin it. There is so much you can loot from the world that it is overwhelming. But once you get past that overwhelming, and once you have the quests that kind of teach you what's what out in the world, you see the possibilities. You find yourself going to do a 5-minute quest and spending an hour gathering things on the way there and the way back. And that sounds bad, but it actually is so much fun because you're exploring during that hour. Instead of just saying, I'm going to do a quest and take 5 minutes, that way I can progress myself by doing the quest, which is maybe a statement you might have in a previous MMO. Here you're going to say that, but you're going to actually come back and say, I explored and did things I was interested in doing and progressed my character in many different ways in this hour of gameplay. And it just feels different. Because at the end of the day, you have done that 5-minute quest, but you've also done so much more. And I think the little things like that, like tracking one ore to one tree to another ore and just finding yourself on the complete opposite side of the map in this pack of creatures that you've never seen before because you've never had a reason to come over there, but you've now traveled there just to gather something, is such a good MMO experience. It really brings that exploration factor that I think so many games have been missing. And that really leads us to the final point on this list, which is obviously the world. And I've been tying it into almost every single part of this, but the fact that the game is called New World is very apt because the world is beautiful. You might look at it and compare it to other MMO maps and think, hey, that looks pretty small, but it feels so big because you're slow. And that might also sound like it sucks. It might sound like you should need mounts or something like that. But I think the fact that it's slow, the fact that you have to be very deliberate in terms of where you choose to make your inn, where you choose to buy a house, when you choose the fast travel, and where you choose to do quests, makes the decisions feel important. You can't just fast travel all the time. You can't just mount up and bring yourself into the sky and just numlock your way all the way to where you need to go. There is decisions that need to be made. And yes, you don't always want to be super intently focused and flagged for PvP and watching every single step you take in the world. So you can flag off PvP and, more casually just run to towns. You can fast travel and do that. So there are ways to get around quicker. But it certainly is a lot of walking, and I think that's a good thing. I think there is a place where mounts could exist in the game, but I definitely think they have to continue to make traveling and traversing the world the important part. Make it so that if the mount does come into the game, and I don't think it needs to be. I think there's a way it could work, but I certainly don't think the game is, starved from mounts. Which I think a lot of people who have come from some of these other games who are used to just mounting everywhere are going to feel. And it's honestly, if I was in the mindset of rushing the max level, probably the way I'd feel about it too. But I think taking my time and really enjoying it has been great so far. Talk to me in another month once I've walked across the entire game 50 times over, and I might have different opinions. We'll see what that video looks like. But for now, I think the game is doing so many things right. So hopefully Amazon Game Studios can take essentially what is the great foundation of an MMO and build it out to be a truly great game. And a lot of people say, hey, it needed another year to develop. I don't know. I think if you left it longer, eventually the hype was going to die out. I think no matter when they released it, people would always say it would need longer. And that's something we've seen with so many other MMOs. I think a lot of us forget how some of these old MMOs launched. And I know no one wants to launch a game before it's ready, but a lot of these games took years to get where they are, tens of years for World of Warcrafts and stuff like that. And not to say it's as good necessarily as Vanilla WoW might have been when it first released, but I think we do have to allow the game to grow while it's live and see where it ends up. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you've enjoyed my reasons for why I find New World so much fun to play. I'd love to hear your own reasons in the comments below, or if you're not enjoying or have not been enjoying New World, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well in the comment section below. But thanks for watching, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.